The siren started again last night, long, low, and trembling like something crying from beneath the earth. It always goes off at 3:17 a.m. sharp, not a second before, not a second after. And no one in Belgium talks about it. Not my mother, who just tightens the curtains and locks the front door. Not the sheriff, who drives around town in silence. Not even old Mr. Heron, who lost his wife the night of the June whale and now just stares at the fields when it comes. I've lived in this town my whole life, 25 years, and I've never known why the siren sounds. Not officially, anyway. People pretend it's a storm warning, but there's no storm. Never is. Last night, I decided to stay up and watch. I sat at my window with the lights off, watching the quiet road outside our farmhouse. Everything was still, too still. Even the cicadas stopped their buzz. At 3:17 exactly, the siren howled through the dark. It rolled over the town like a warning from God, and then something moved at the edge of the cornfield. I saw it, just beyond the fence, a tall shape, stooped and pale. Its limbs were too long, joints bending the wrong way. It stood like it was listening, head tilted, arms slack, trembling. I didn't breathe. My pulse thudded in my ears, and then it turned its head toward my window. Eyes. It had eyes, glowing faintly like coals buried in ash. When I blinked, it was gone, swallowed by the field. But I saw it, just like I saw the footprints this morning, muddy and clawed, right beneath my window. Something walks when the siren wails, and I need to know what it is. There's an unspoken rule in Belgium: stay inside when the siren goes off. No one wrote it down, no signs, no town meetings, but everyone follows it, like it's in our blood. You feel it when you move here, the way neighbors glance at you if you're out too late, the way parents yank their kids inside before the sun sets on siren nights. This morning, I tried to bring it up at the diner. "Did you hear the siren last night?" I asked Sarah, the waitress I've known since high school. She went stiff, her smile dropping. "Don't talk about that, Emmett." "Why not?" "Just don't. People who ask too many questions don't tend to stay long." I waited for her to laugh. She didn't. She walked away without another word. The town feels off today, like it always does the day after a siren. Empty streets, drawn blinds. Even the animals act strange. My dog, Copper, won't stop barking at the back fence. The air smells faintly of wet earth and iron, though there hasn't been rain. I walked the perimeter of the house this afternoon, trying to calm him down. That's when I found them again. Tracks in the dirt. They were bigger than a man's, but not quite animal either. Toes long, splayed out like a bird's, but deep, like whatever made them was heavy. There were drag marks, too. Something being pulled. I followed them a few feet until they just stopped. Vanished mid-stride. I told myself I imagined it last night. The figure. The glowing eyes. But I didn't. And now the fear's gotten under my skin. I can feel it. Like something's watching. The next siren is in 12 days. I'm going to find out what happens when you break the rule. The library in Belgium is older than the town charter. A squat brick building with ivy-covered windows and the smell of yellowing paper. I've never seen anyone but Mrs. Kinley there. Ancient, soft-spoken, always filing something that doesn't exist in the computer system. I went there today, not for a novel, but for answers. "Do you have anything about the siren?" I asked. Her eyes snapped to mine like I'd uttered a slur. "We don't discuss that," she whispered. "Nothing's written down. Best keep it that way." But I didn't leave. I waited until she took her afternoon nap behind the desk, head tilted back, mouth slightly open. Then I slipped into the archives. There's a basement level, cold, lined with rows of steel filing cabinets and water-stained boxes. I found a cabinet marked Town Records, unfiled. At the very back, jammed between weather reports and budget summaries, I found a thin folder labeled Civil Emergency Drill Protocol, 1952. It described a containment procedure tied to a non-disclosed biological anomaly. No photos, no real descriptions, just this. Siren to be activated at 0317 HRs on scheduled intervals. All residents to remain indoors. Exposure to anomaly is lethal and unpredictable in behavioral patterns. Civilian interaction discouraged. Removal not possible. Repeat, not possible. Then a handwritten note at the bottom. They lied about the 12 missing. We found bones near the woods. Just bones. That folder wasn't meant to be seen. As I closed the drawer, the lights flickered. Once, then twice. And from somewhere upstairs, I heard the unmistakable sound of the siren. Soft, low. But the next one's not scheduled for 12 days. So why the hell is it sounding now? The sound was faint, muffled, almost like it wasn't coming from outside, but from beneath the library floor. I froze, hands still on the cabinet drawer. There wasn't to be another siren. Not for 12 days. Not unless something had gone wrong. The building hummed with quiet electricity, and somewhere above I could hear a slow creaking, floorboards settling, or maybe someone moving. I crept up the stairs, each step groaning like it might give me away. Mrs. Kinley was no longer at her desk. Her chair was empty, still slowly spinning like she'd just left. The front doors were shut, but I swear I heard the deadbolt slide on its own, locked from the outside. The siren continued in waves, drawn-out wails that made my chest vibrate. My ears rang with it. I looked toward the windows. The streets were empty, but not normal empty. It was like the town had exhaled all at once and refused to inhale again. Then I saw movement outside. 3 people, 2 men and a woman, walking in perfect synchronization down Main Street, dressed in old military gear. Gas masks covered their faces, and one of them carried a long pole with what looked like a needle on the end. They stopped in front of the library. One pointed at the building, another held up a device with a blinking green light. I ducked below the window. My pulse thundered in my ears. I crawled back behind a bookshelf, heart hammering. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. 1 message. Do not move. They can't see stillness. The floor creaked again, closer this time. Someone, or something, was inside with me, and I couldn't run. Not while that siren kept screaming from the earth itself. I held my breath. Not metaphorically. Literally. Every muscle in my body locked as something shuffled between the rows of bookshelves just 10 feet from me. It didn't move like a person, too heavy, too slow. Each footstep sounded damp, like wet meat slapping tile. The siren outside had quieted into a soft hum now, but the hum was vibrating through the floor, up my spine. It felt like something alive, aware. The thing turned down my aisle. I pressed my body flat against the bottom shelf just behind a row of thick encyclopedias. Dust filled my nose. My phone buzzed again. Another message, same block number. Do not blink. I swallowed hard, resisting the urge to look, but I couldn't help it. Slowly, carefully, I angled my head. I wish I hadn't. It wasn't one of the masked people. This was something else entirely. Tall, naked, skin like stretched wax. No eyes, no ears, just a face that looked half melted, its mouth gaping open like it was gasping for air that wasn't there. Its arms hung too long, its hands twitched at the fingertips like it was feeling for me in the air. It stopped inches from where I lay, and I could see its chest rising and falling in uneven jerks. I didn't blink. It leaned down, its face tilting slightly, listening. A whimper almost escaped me, but I forced it back down. Then, like a switch had flipped, the siren outside stopped. Dead silence. The creature recoiled like it had been struck, let out a gurgling hiss, and then vanished. No footfalls, no fading echo. It was just gone. I lay there for minutes, maybe hours. Eventually, my phone buzzed again. You've seen it now. You need to leave before the next one. By the time I slipped out of the library, the sun was beginning to set. Beldam was eerily quiet, as if the whole town had collectively forgotten how to breathe. The streets were empty. The masked trio was gone. No sign they were ever there. No tracks, no tire marks, just stillness. But someone was watching me. I felt it the second I stepped outside, like a weight pressing between my shoulder blades. I kept walking, hands in my pockets, head down. My truck was a block away near the post office. I didn't run. Running draws attention. When I got to the driver's side door, I saw him in the side mirror. One of the masked figures, standing at the corner, perfectly still, just watching. My keys nearly slipped from my fingers, but I got in, locked the doors, and drove. Fast. Too fast. I didn't stop until I was halfway out of town, past the cornfields and the old railroad line. That's where I saw him. Not a masked figure. This one had no gear, no uniform, just a long brown coat and a ragged cloth tied over his face, like an old plague doctor without the beak. He was standing on the side of the road, one hand raised like he was hailing a cab. I should have kept driving, but I stopped. He walked slowly to my window and leaned in. His voice was raspy, like gravel in the throat. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked. "The hollow one." I didn't answer. "You won't make it to the next siren, not if you're alone." He dropped something through the window, a small cassette tape, unlabeled. "When you're ready," he said, turning away. "Play it in the dark, alone." Then he was gone. Just gone. I should have thrown the tape away. Instead, I sat in my room that night with the lights off, holding the thing in my hand like it was a live grenade. It was just a plain black cassette, no writing, no markings. The plastic felt warm, like it had been sitting in the sun. My old tape player was still buried in my closet, a relic from high school. I dusted it off, clicked the cassette in, and pressed play. Static. Then a voice, male, hoarse and trembling. "If you're hearing this, it means you've seen one. That's the start. It always begins with sight." I leaned closer. They are not spirits. They are not aliens. They are what's left behind when a place rots. Not wood, not brick. Time, memory, soul. The tape hissed, then continued. The siren isn't a warning. It's a signal. It tells them when it's safe to come through, and every time it sounds, the boundary weakens. A little more. I felt cold sweat beat at my temples. You've noticed people go missing. They say it's drugs, accidents, runaways. It's not. The hollow ones take, but not all at once. They erase. One memory at a time. Then the body. The voice grew strained, whispering. There's a facility in the woods. Government. Old. Buried underground. They opened the rift during something called Project Lazarus. Static again. A warble. Then. You don't have long. If they've seen you, you're marked. Click. The tape ended. Outside, Copper began barking. Savage. Desperate. I ran to the window and pulled back the curtain. Someone stood at the tree line, not moving, not breathing, just watching. The hollow one had followed me home. It hasn't moved. I've been staring at the thing for almost an hour. It's still at the edge of the trees, barely visible in the moonlight. Not approaching, not retreating, just waiting. Copper won't go near the window anymore. He's curled in the corner, trembling, his eyes locked on the floor like he knows looking outside is a mistake. I finally shut the curtain, but I can feel it, like its gaze is pushing through the walls. I thought I could reason through this, collect evidence, solve the mystery like it's some puzzle. But this isn't a story, it's a trap, and I think I've already stepped too far in. This morning, I went into town. I needed answers, not from tapes or shadows, but from someone living. I thought about talking to Sheriff Briggs. He's always been straight with me, but when I saw his cruiser parked outside the station, I noticed something strange. The entire back seat was filled with gas masks, dozens of them, stacked like skulls. He's involved, or he knows something. Either way, I'm not walking into that office. So I went to the one person I swore I'd never ask for help. My father. We haven't spoken since Mom died, 5 years ago this October. But he was military, stationed here long before I was born. He always knew things he never talked about. I found him out at the old farmhouse, sitting on the porch with a shotgun across his lap. He didn't even look surprised to see me. "You saw it, didn't you?" he said. I nodded. He took a deep breath, eyes on the woods. "You're marked now. You've got one chance left." One chance to do what? To close the rift. My father led me inside without another word. The air in the farmhouse was stale, heavy with dust and old tobacco. Maps covered the dining room table, hand-drawn diagrams of the woods, marked with strange symbols, red X's, and numbers that made no sense. He pointed to a spot circled 3 times in black ink. "Here," he said. "That's where they first came through, back in '52. "That's what the file said," I whispered. "Project Lazarus." He turned sharply. "You read the files?" I nodded. For a moment, he just stared at me. Then he pulled a metal lockbox from beneath the floorboards and opened it. Inside, photos. Old, black and white. Blurry figures moving through mist. One showed a man suspended midair, arms twisted at impossible angles. Another, a room filled with people, faces blurred into static. "They weren't ready," he said. "Thought they were tapping into some lost energy source, or a weapon, but they tore a hole." "A rift," I murmured. He nodded. "Something got through. They contained it, barely. That's what the Siren does. It stabilizes the membrane. But it doesn't work anymore," I said. "I saw it. I saw them." He sat down, suddenly exhausted. "The town made a deal with the government. In exchange for protection and silence, they let them keep the facility hidden, but the rift's widening. One day the Siren won't hold it. And then they'll come through, all of them." I felt cold inside. "What do we do?" He looked up at me with tired, guilt-ridden eyes. "We find the facility," he said, "and we destroy what's left." I swallowed hard, heart pounding. Outside, the wind picked up, and with it, a familiar low hum. The Siren was warming up early. Again. We didn't wait for the Siren to finish warming up. My father shoved supplies into a canvas bag. Flashlights, flares, a bolt cutter, 2 pistols, and a journal he called the Black Book. Said I, TDD came from one of the original scientists. Pages scrawled in frantic handwriting, symbols I couldn't understand. "The facility's buried somewhere under Cradle Hill," he said, strapping the bag to his back. "They built it deep, hollowed out the mountain like a tomb. And no one ever stumbled across it?" "They did," he muttered. "They don't anymore." We took his old Jeep up the logging trail that snakes along the north side of the woods. The trees here are ancient, black bark, limbs twisted like they're trying to strangle the sky. It was too quiet. No insects, no birds, not even wind. We reached the trail's end by moonlight. My father led the way on foot, using a compass and the strange symbols from his journal. After 20 minutes, we came upon a clearing, perfectly circular, about 40 feet wide. Dead grass, no trees. The ground looked scorched. "Why does it feel wrong?" I asked. "Because it is," he said. "This is where the rift pulses through. The Siren draws from this spot, bleeds its signal into the earth." There was something else here too. A metal hatch, half buried under vines and dirt. It looked like a storm shelter, but with reinforced steel and faded government warnings. My father knelt and brushed off a symbol scratched into the surface. 3 overlapping circles, a triangle at the center. "That's the Lazarus seal," he said. He reached for the bolt cutter. Suddenly, we heard movement behind us. Twigs snapping, a soft, guttural clicking sound. We turned. There were 3 of them now, watching from the trees, waiting. They didn't move. 3 hollow ones stood at the tree line, unblinking, twitching, mouths agape as if silently screaming. My father didn't hesitate. He jammed the bolt cutter into the hatch's lock and snapped it free in one brutal motion. The metal creaked open with a rusted shriek, revealing a narrow tunnel descending into pitch-black darkness. Concrete steps, stale, freezing air wafted up like a long-dead breath. "They won't follow below," he said. "They're drawn to memory, to life. What's down there? It doesn't feed the same way." I hesitated. Then the hollow ones stepped forward, one twitching violently, its jaw popping open at a crooked angle. We dropped into the tunnel and slammed the hatch shut just as they reached the clearing. The silence hit like a vacuum. No siren, no wind, just the distant drip of water echoing down the corridor ahead. Our flashlights cut thin tunnels through the dark. Concrete walls stretched out in both directions, covered in peeling hazard signs and strange graffiti, words and languages I didn't recognize. Some looked burned in. My father moved quickly, muttering to himself, flipping through the black book as we passed door after door. Room A5, storage. Room A6, observer holding. Room A7, sealed. That one stopped us both. Its door was welded shut, thick steel. But something had scratched from the inside, deep claw marks etched into the metal, as if something had been trying to escape. What the hell did they keep in here? I whispered. My father's face was pale. Something that remembers everything. I didn't ask what that meant. Ahead, the corridor ended in a massive vault-like door, marked with the Lazarus seal. Beyond it, the rift itself. But we weren't alone down here. Footsteps echoed behind us, and then a voice whispered my name. Emmett. It was my name, but twisted, drawn out like a breath across broken G. Was I spun, flashlight shaking in my hand, but there was nothing behind us. Just the long, empty corridor and that welded door. Room A7. The voice came again. Emmett, you left me. Lower this time, more familiar. I felt my stomach drop. It was my mother's voice. That's not real, my father said, grabbing my shoulder. It's the rift. It reaches, mimics, tries to pull from your memories. How does it know? Because you're close now, and it's hungry. We turned back toward the Lazarus door. My father flipped through the black book again, landing on a page with a diagram of the vault's control panel. 5 buttons, 1 key slot. He pulled a small brass key from around his neck and slotted it in. The vault door groaned and shuddered, releasing steam from the seams as if exhaling after decades of holding its breath. I was expecting another hallway. I wasn't expecting this. The room beyond was massive, like the inside of a cathedral. Concrete walls soared upward into shadow. The floor was metal grating, and beneath it, something pulsed, dim red light that throbbed like a heartbeat. And at the center, suspended in a column of glass and steel, was the rift. It looked like a tear in the air itself, black and writhing, edges flickering like flame and water. Shapes moved inside it, but I couldn't focus on them. They made my head pound, my eyes water. I felt like I was watching time bleed. My father stared, jaw clenched. We seal this, or we die. But the voice came again. This time, it was my mother. And she said something I'll never forget. You're already too late. Then something moved inside the rift, something huge. The thing inside the rift shifted. Not walked, not emerged. Shifted, like smoke folding in on itself, bones twisting through fog. It didn't have a face, not exactly, just a presence so immense it pressed against my chest like a hand made of gravity. And then, it looked at me. There were no eyes, no mouth, no body, but I felt it. A gaze, cold, ancient, and impossibly vast. It was like having your soul exposed to the vacuum of space. My knees buckled. Don't look at it, my father yelled, shoving me behind a pillar of steel and wires. It'll root inside your mind, make you see things, make you want to open it. I think it already did, I gasped. It knew my name. He swore under his breath and yanked open a steel hatch in the floor, revealing a terminal, switches, dials, and a red button covered by a cracked plastic guard. This is the override, he said. It'll fry the system, collapse the stabilizers, and, if we're lucky, fold the rift back in. I stared at him. If we're lucky? He nodded grimly. If not, it tears open wider and takes the whole goddamn town with it. He hesitated, hand hovering over the button. And then from the shadows behind us, a figure stepped forward. Gas mask, military gear, holding a rifle. More footsteps followed. 2, 3, a half dozen. We were surrounded. We're under orders to preserve the rift, the first one said, voice filtered through static. You don't understand what you're dealing with. My father stood tall. I understand exactly. The soldier raised his rifle. Then someone else entered, slowly, calmly. The man in the brown coat and ragged cloth mask. And he said, "Let him push it, or we all burn." The man in the ragged cloth mask walked into the room like he belonged there. No fear, no hurry. His boots echoed against the metal grating, and even the soldiers shifted when they saw him. He didn't look at them. He looked straight at me. "I told you to play the tape in the dark," he said, "and now you're in it." One of the soldiers, higher rank by the insignia on his shoulder, stepped forward. "You're not authorized." The man reached into his coat and pulled out a rusted badge, black lettering, government issue, but nothing I recognized. The soldier froze. "You were in Lazarus," my father said, his voice low. The man nodded. 72 hours, that's how long I spent in the Rift's Bleed. Time collapses in there. You don't age, you unravel. He turned toward the soldiers. "You want to preserve it? You don't even know what it is." "We're under orders. From ghosts," the man said coldly. "From a defunded experiment run by people who died screaming." He turned back to us. "You have one shot. That button will collapse the stabilizers, but it needs a charge spike to ignite the failsafe." My father pulled the black book from his bag and flipped to a torn page near the back. There, scrawled between burnt corners, was the diagram. "There's a secondary core," he said, "in the sublevel beneath us. It powers the signal pulse. We detonate that. We give the failsafe enough juice to close the rift. And if it doesn't," I asked, "then we get swallowed." We stood in silence. The soldiers didn't stop us. They just watched. Like even they knew this was bigger than any of them. We moved to the stairs that led to sublevel 2. And far above us, the siren started again. Only this time, it wasn't wailing. It was screaming. The stairwell spiraled downward like a throat swallowing us whole. The deeper we went, the more unnatural the air became, thick, metallic, and cold like the inside of a crypt. Our flashlights flickered the moment we passed the halfway point. "That's the bleed," the masked man said. "Reality gets thin down here. Don't trust what you see." The walls changed too, no longer just concrete, but scarred with black veins like scorched roots embedded in the stone, pulsing faintly, as if the facility itself was growing sick. Sublevel 2 had no doors, just a long corridor leading to a circular chamber lit by flickering emergency lights. In the center stood the pulse core. It looked like a generator fused with a living organ, part machine, part something else. Tubes fed into it. It glowed a sickly red, pulsing with each distant scream of the siren above. Beside it was a control panel crusted with dust and dried blood. My father stepped forward. "We charge the failsafe from here, set the overload timer, then we get the hell out." I watched him work, trying to keep my eyes off the shadows forming on the walls. Shapes, human shapes, but twitching, flickering like candlelight. Then one of them stepped free. It wasn't a hallucination. It was her, my mother, but not how I remembered her. She was twisted, eyes hollow, mouth stretched into a smile too wide to be real. "Don't leave me again, Emmett," she whispered. I stumbled back, heart pounding. "It's not her," the masked man growled. "It's a reflection, the rift pulling from your guilt." I turned away, closed my eyes. My father slammed a final switch. The pulse core shrieked to life. And then, all the shadows started walking. The shadows peeled off the walls like wet paper. They moved wrong, too slow and too fast at the same time, flickering with every pulse of the core. Their faces were warped memories, people I know. You, twisted into things I didn't. My 5th grade teacher with no eyes. My best friend Matt, mouth sewn shut. A girl I dated once, cheeks hollow, fingers too long, dragging against the floor. And they all looked at me like I had betrayed them. My father yanked me to the ground just as one lunged. Its hand passed through the space my head had been, but I felt it, cold, like frostbite straight through my skull. "They're not real," he snapped. "They feel real," I shouted. "They are, if you let them be." The masked man pulled a flare from his coat and struck it. Light burst into the room, raw, violent red, and the shadows shrieked, recoiling like they'd been burned. "They follow thought," he said. "Don't think about them. Focus on the exit." My father finished programming the overload. "We've got 3 minutes before this thing cooks." "Failsafe?" I asked. He nodded. "With the core gone, the main chamber's rift collapses, if the pulse is strong enough. If not, the rest didn't need to be said." We ran. The flare cast wild, throbbing light, turning the corridor into a tunnel of hell. Shadows clawed at the edges. Some whispered my name. Some screamed like they were inside me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As we reached the stairwell, the walls shifted, not physically, but like the space itself twisted. 1 second we were climbing concrete steps. The next, we were walking on rusted metal, then dirt, then wood. The facility was bleeding time now, and the siren above was still screaming. We had 90 seconds. We were running up stairs that didn't make sense anymore. One step was solid steel, the next, rotting wood. Another felt soft, like carpet soaked in water. The facility's structure was unraveling, morphing with memories and madness leaking from the rift. My father stumbled. I grabbed his arm and pulled him up just as part of the wall melted into a window. Through it, I saw my childhood bedroom, frozen in time, lit by the glow of a red nightlight. The stuffed bear I'd buried with my mother was on the bed. Then the window shattered into dust. "Ignore it!" the masked man yelled, shoving past us. "This is the bleed. It uses your past to slow you down. It wants you to stay." We reached the Lazarus vault door. The rift was still there, unstable now, expanding outward in slow pulses like lungs exhaling ruin. Chunks of the chamber's ceiling had collapsed. Metal screamed somewhere high above. Sparks rained down. The soldiers were gone. No bodies, just their masks. I didn't ask. My father dove for the terminal. Failsafe's primed, cores burning. Just need to hit it before the pulse fades. The masked man pulled a second flare and lit it. Blue this time. Its light steadied the air for a moment. But then, the rift moved. Not shifted. Moved like it noticed us. It stretched forward, tendrils of black reaching like fingers, and from it stepped something new. Not a hollow one, not a memory. This thing had mass, bone, teeth, an antlered skull, skin that rippled like silk stretched too far. Its voice was all our voices, overlapping. "You opened the door. You let us in." We froze. The siren screamed again, but this time, it sounded like laughter. It stepped fully into the chamber. The thing that came from the rift wasn't just a creature. It was a concept wearing flesh. Antlers scraped the ceiling, its limbs bent in unnatural angles, bones clicking like wind chimes made of jawbones. Its eyes weren't eyes at all, just hollow voids, swirling like ink in water. The flare in the masked man's hand snuffed out. My father whispered, "Riftborn." The creature tilted its head. "You left us. You closed the door before. Now we remember." It took another step forward. The concrete beneath its feet froze, cracked, then turned to ash. "We need to detonate now," I whispered. "If we don't anchor the collapse sequence," my father hissed, "it won't close. It'll just spread." The creature raised one impossibly long arm. The siren above wailed again. Blood began to seep from my ears. The masked man drew a long blade from his coat, something ancient, etched with runes that shimmered faintly in the dark. "You two get to the upper floor. Hit the manual trigger. I'll distract it." "You'll die," I said. He smiled grimly. "I've already died once. I'm just making it count this time." The Riftborn surged forward, its body blurred, collapsing and reforming mid-movement like it couldn't decide how many dimensions to occupy. The masked man charged. "Go!" he shouted. We ran. Behind us, metal clanged, lights shattered, and a sound filled the space like a choir screaming backward. I looked back only once, and saw the masked man plunging his blade into the Riftborn's chest. The creature didn't bleed, it laughed. We tore up the stairwell, reaching the failsafe terminal. My father slammed his palm onto the console. A red light blinked once, then twice. Then everything shook. The siren cut out. Mid-howl, mid-pulse, mid-panic, silence. Just for a second. Then the floor split. Not cracked or trembled. Split, like a zipper ripped down the world. White light spilled up from below, blinding and unnatural. The rift was trying to stop us. Or maybe punish us. I screamed my father's name as we were both thrown backward. Concrete peeled from the walls like paper. The fail-safe terminal sparked violently, but the red light was now solid. "Trigger is active," he shouted, blood running from his nose. "We've got 30 seconds before it collapses the chamber." The Riftborn's laughter echoed through the walls. It wasn't in one place anymore. It was everywhere. In the metal, in the lights, in our heads. I tasted copper, felt heat crawl down my spine like molten fingers. The masked man was gone. So was the rift. Only the Riftborn remained, reforming, twisting midair like smoke made of sinew. Its skull was shattered on one side, but it kept rebuilding, rewinding, refusing. My father grabbed my arm. "We have to seal it from the outside. If we're in here when the chamber compresses, we're part of the closure. But the Riftborn, it's anchored to this space. That's the weakness. We trap it here with the last cycle of the pulse." My legs moved on instinct. We ran for the upper exit, the same hall we entered when this all began. Only now it was flooding with a thick, black mist. The air was syrup. My lungs screamed. With one final lunge, we broke into the stairwell and slammed the emergency seal just as a tendril whipped toward us. Thud. Silence again. Then, boom. The base shook as if the world itself coughed, and the rift was gone. The earth rumbled for a long time after the explosion. Dust choked the stairwell. Every breath was razor-edged. My ears rang like sirens of their own. I lay on the cold concrete, my chest heaving, heart skipping, G-beats like it couldn't figure out what rhythm to follow. My father coughed beside me, his glasses cracked, face streaked with ash and blood. But he was alive. We were both alive. I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. The station's emergency lights flickered on, casting long, blood-red shadows through the corridor. Somewhere deep below, the remains of the Riftborn pulsed faintly, if anything of it still remained at all. But the rift was closed, wasn't it? We limped our way back to the surface ladder. Each step felt heavier, like gravity was mourning the thing we just buried. I didn't speak. Neither did my father. There was nothing to say, not yet. We both knew what we saw, what we felt, and we both knew it wasn't over. When we emerged into the open air, the first thing I noticed was how quiet the world felt. No birds, no wind, no distant hum of town life. The siren was off, but something else wasn't right. The sky looked wrong, just slightly off. A strange hue at the horizon, a shiver in the sun's shape, like a painting left too long in the rain, distorted. We weren't the only ones who noticed. A man stood at the edge of the forest line, watching us. His silhouette was wrong, arms too long, neck too still. I blinked, and he was gone. My father looked at me with hollow eyes. "The rift was closed," he whispered, but something came through before it did. We made it back to town by nightfall. Everything looked normal, too normal. Kids rode bikes, a couple walked their dog past the diner. Mr. Harlow was still out sweeping his porch, like he did every evening, same time, every week. But there was something hollow behind their smiles, something vacant in their eyes. Like they didn't remember the siren, like they never heard it at all. My father didn't speak the entire drive home. His hands gripped the wheel like it was the only thing anchoring him to this world. When we pulled into our driveway, I saw them, the footprints, leading up to the house, bare, long-toed, sunken too deep into the soil for a human. Not mine, not his. We followed them anyway. The house was cold when we entered. Not just temperature, wrong. As if it had been empty for decades instead of just a day. Our photographs on the wall were all blank, faded to white like the memories had been erased. The clocks ticked backward. My father took the shotgun from above the mantel. He didn't ask questions. He didn't hesitate. Something had followed us, and it was still here. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the hallway with the lights off, listening. At 3:33 a.m., the bathroom door creaked open. I held my breath. Something stepped out. Not fast, not loud, just slow, wet, deliberate. Its shadow stretched the entire hallway, longer than any human, taller than the ceiling allowed. But when I blinked, it was gone. The only thing left was a smear of dark fluid on the floor and a smell, like scorched bone and seawater. It didn't need the siren anymore. It was already inside. I woke to find the bathroom mirror shattered. Not cracked, shattered. Every shard was gone, as if it had imploded and dissolved into nothing. The frame hung there, empty, reflecting only the pale yellow wall behind it. But I could feel something watching me through it. My reflection was still there, even without the glass. It stared back from the empty frame. It blinked when I didn't. I backed out of the room, heart pounding in my throat. My father met me in the hallway, his face grim. "It's the bleed," he said. "The what?" "When something crosses through the rift, it doesn't always bring its body. Sometimes it brings its memory, its shape, its smell, its echo. It bleeds through places it doesn't belong. And once it does, you're never sure what's real anymore." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "So we're haunted by something we can't touch?" He didn't answer. Later that day, I went into town. I needed to see other people, remind myself that reality still existed outside my head. But what I found chilled me worse than anything underground. No one remembered the last siren, not a single person. The cashier at the gas station smiled like always. "You sure you didn't dream it?" she asked. "Those things haven't gone off in years." A man behind her nodded. "You must be thinking of that test run back in 2011. But I saw it in their eyes, the flicker of confusion, the way their smiles didn't reach their cheeks. Their words were learned, not lived. They'd been changed, or replaced. That night I walked past the mirrorless frame again, and this time my reflection smiled, but I didn't. I don't remember falling asleep. I only remember waking up screaming. My father was already at my bedside, gripping my shoulders, shouting my name. My throat was raw, my sheets soaked in sweat, but the worst part wasn't the nightmare. It was the sound still echoing in my ears. Not from outside, not from some distant tower, but from inside my own chest. The siren. It wasn't sounding in the town anymore, it was sounding through me. I staggered to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, but the feeling wouldn't fade. My heartbeat throbbed in sync with that awful, rising wail. I opened my mouth and felt it vibrating behind my teeth, like something was trying to call out through me. My father watched from the doorway, his face pale. "It's already started," he whispered. "What has?" "You were exposed too long. It's nesting inside you now." "What is?" "The caller. That's what they used to call it. It doesn't kill you fast. It rewrites you, slowly, memory by memory, nerve by nerve, until there's nothing left but its signal." I wanted to deny it, to say I was fine, but I wasn't. When I looked in the mirror, I saw it again. My reflection standing a second too long after I moved, breathing just a bit slower, smiling with my teeth, my face, but not my mind. My father grabbed my hand. "We have one more shot. There's a place beyond the rift, a place where it can't follow. We'll go tonight." I nodded. But I didn't tell him what I already knew, that it had already followed us here. And it wasn't done calling, it was just warming up. That night, my father unrolled a map, not on paper, on his back. He removed his shirt under the flickering attic bulb, revealing something I'd never seen before. A twisting, ink-black tattoo sprawling from his spine to his shoulder blades. It wasn't art, it was alive. The lines shimmered faintly, pulsing with each heartbeat. "This is how I got back last time," he said, breath shallow. "They branded me when I crossed over. Not to mark me, to protect me." He pointed to a spiral symbol near his right shoulder. "This is where we go in. But you have to follow the path. Step outside it even for a second, and we'll never come back." I stared at the map, each line etched with something deeper than ink, as if the skin itself remembered. I realized then, it wasn't a map of a place. It was a map of a wound. We left before midnight, when the streets were still, the fog curling low and thick. We passed beneath the Siren Tower, its rusted frame humming like a tuning fork. My body still echoed with its signal. I could feel it vibrating in my ribs. At the edge of town, we reached the clearing. The grass was scorched, the trees bent outward like something had burst up from beneath. He handed me a canister of oil and a silver lighter. "We burn a circle first," he said. "Then we speak the old name, and when the door opens, don't look down." We poured. We lit. The fire rose in a perfect ring, flames whipping outward but never inward. Then my father spoke a word I didn't understand. The ground inside the circle went black. Then it opened, and something below smiled back. The black opening in the center of the burning circle wasn't just a hole, it was absence, a space so empty it sucked the color from everything around it. Even the firelight bent toward it, drawn like breath toward a silent scream. My father grabbed my hand. "Close your eyes. Step forward." I didn't. I couldn't, because I saw what he didn't. The shape inside the void. It was crouched, enormous but folded wrong, like it had been crammed through a keyhole and stitched back together with nerve and bone. It had no face, just a wet, spiraling cavity at the center of its head. A void that pulled at my thoughts. It was humming, not with noise, but with memory. Mine. It was feeding on who I had been. My father yanked me forward, and we fell. The descent wasn't down. It was sideways, like sliding through a coil or a scream stuck in a throat. The world stretched and thinned until time felt like string pulled taut between us. And then we landed. The place wasn't dark. It was colorless. A field of white sand beneath a bruised sky where the air smelled like bleach and burnt feathers. Above us, frozen in the clouds, hundreds of Siren towers spiraling upward like bone. My father was bleeding from the eyes. "It's worse than I remember," he gasped. "What is this?" "The other side of the Siren, where the signal comes from, where they harvest us." And then we heard it, a sound like wind through a throat full of teeth. The Siren wasn't sounding from a tower anymore. It was walking toward us. It emerged from the horizon like a crawling cathedral, a monstrosity of bone and rust, its legs jointed like praying mantis limbs, each step causing the ground to crack and hum. Towering above us was the Siren Walker, a thing forged from centuries of grief, wired with sinew, screaming as it moved. The sound wasn't from a horn, it was its voice, a chorus of human screams pitched to mimic a siren's wail. And as it walked, it called to something beneath the sand. Shapes stirred below us, human-shaped, writhing, trying to crawl upward, but melting back into the white sand, like wax figures exposed to heat. Their faces flickered in and out of focus, like I was trying to remember someone I never really met. "I thought they were echoes," my father whispered, "but they're not." "Who?" He knelt, running a trembling hand through the sand. A skeletal hand reached up in response, grasping at him, holding on. "They're people from Ridgeway. Everyone the Siren ever took, trapped in this loop. It doesn't just kill them, it records them, replays them." "Why?" He pointed to the Siren Walker. "Because it needs us to exist. We give it shape, meaning. That sound back home? That's not a warning. It's a summons, a ritual. Every few weeks the town remembers it, and it wakes up. I couldn't look away from its head. A mass of mirrors and mouths, all screaming different words at once. Then I saw one of the faces reflected in its glassy skull. It was mine, mouth open, eyes missing, and it was still screaming. The Siren Walker stood above us now, its towering form casting no shadow, as if even light refused to acknowledge it. Its mirrored skull tilted down, focusing on me. The wailing built into a fever pitch, voices splitting and reforming inside my skull like glass shattering in reverse. My father was on his knees, fingers buried in the sand. It's choosing you. What do you mean? You're the next one, Eli. It takes a voice every cycle, one soul to carry the weight, one memory to amplify the call. You'll become part of it. That's how it echoes. The hands beneath the sand were reaching for me now, dozens, pale, shaking. Some wore bracelets. One wore my old teacher's wedding ring. They weren't angry. They were pleading, not to be saved, to join me. I backed away. No, there has to be another way. There is. My father stood slowly, clutching something from his coat. A blade made of bone, etched with symbols that shimmered in unnatural light. You brought me here to break it, he said. The sacrifice doesn't have to be you. It can be someone marked by the cycle, someone who escaped it before. His eyes told me everything. He'd been taken, long ago, one of the missing Ridgeway people who returned. Wrong. You lied to me. I came back to fix what I started. He pressed the blade into my hand. The Siren Walker lowered its skull. The faces inside its mirrors turned toward us, every one of them watching. You can end this, he whispered, but it takes blood. I looked down at the blade, at my father's trembling form, at the thing looming above us, and I realized the siren wasn't the monster. The cycle was. The blade trembled in my hand, impossibly cold, as if it had been carved from the spine of winter itself. My father stood still, eyes locked on mine, pleading but resolute. I escaped once, he said, voice breaking. That was never supposed to happen. I was chosen during the cycle of '86, and somehow I ran. But the siren doesn't forget. It followed me. It followed us. That's why it came back. I looked toward the Siren Walker, its head turned with slow, inhuman grace. The mirrored skull flickered again. The image of me was still there, but something had changed. Now, my father's reflection was beside it. He was already part of it. You're lying, I whispered. You've always been a part of it. He flinched. You brought me here to finish it, or to replace you. He opened his mouth to speak, but stopped. Not because he didn't have the words, because they weren't his to say anymore. The siren's voice, now layered with his, echoed through the sand like thunder underwater. We feed the roots. We echo the blood. The bell must toll. Suddenly, the hands beneath the sand weren't pulling me down. They were pushing him up. Dozens of arms lifting my father skyward toward the Siren Walker. No, wait! But he didn't fight them. He looked back at me with something between shame and peace. I couldn't undo what I did, but you can end it. I rushed forward, but the sand swallowed my legs. The blade clattered from my hand. He was lifted to the siren's skull, and as he reached it, he whispered a final word. Remember. The siren screamed, but this time it was different. Not a warning, a death knell. The scream stopped, not faded, not diminished, just stopped. The air collapsed inward like the vacuum left by a held breath finally released. The sky above the sinkhole rippled. No clouds, just waves, as if we were standing beneath a frozen ocean suspended in the atmosphere. The Siren Walker didn't move. Neither did my father. He hung midair, arms outstretched, suspended in the grip of unseen gravity. His mouth hung open, but no sound came out. Just light, a pulsing, flickering beam of violet that arced from his throat into the siren's skull. And then, it cracked. A fissure split the mirrored dome, running straight down the center. From it spilled voices. Not screams, not warnings. Memories. I could hear them. A girl in the 1960s begging her brother to stay out of the woods. A firefighter from 74 trying to silence the siren before it called the wrong ones. A mother burying something in the churchyard, something that never stayed buried. They weren't ghosts, they were imprints. Each victim, each offering, each chosen soul, trapped inside the siren's mind, echoed forever, and now they were breaking free. The walker shuddered, its frame convulsed, the glass skull bulged outward, veins of black spiraling through its reflective surface. Cries of agony and relief pulsed through the air like thunder. I fell to my knees. This was the core, the heart of the horror, the truth that Ridgway's siren was never meant to warn us. It was a prison alarm, and the moment it stopped, something ancient would wake up. Beneath the sand, I felt it shift, something deeper than the sinkhole, older than the siren, something that had waited for the cage to break. And now, it wasn't waiting anymore. The ground cracked beneath me with a sound like splitting bone. It wasn't a collapse, it was a birth. The sinkhole widened, the sand draining like water down a giant throat. F. Rom within the void, a low hum rumbled upward, not from any machine or creature, but from the planet itself. Like the Earth was remembering something it had tried to forget. The siren walker shattered. Glass exploded outward in 1,000 glittering shards, revealing its core, a twisted spine of rusted metal and pulsing flesh. The light from my father's mouth flickered out. His body dropped, crumpling in a heap on the sand, unmoving. I screamed and tried to run to him, but the ground tilted violently. Something huge was rising beneath us. The sky above turned the color of bruises and dusk. Then I saw it. Not eyes, not limbs. Roots, veined, fungal, skeletal, coated in black rot and ancient ash. They snaked up from the pit like tentacles, but slower, more deliberate. Each one bore markings, symbols, burned deep into the barked flesh. They pulsed in time with the siren's old rhythm. Boom, boom, boom. The siren had been its heartbeat all along. The walker was never the monster. It was the warden, and now the prison was breaking. A single tendril curled around the remains of the siren's metal frame. It crushed it effortlessly, and then it reached toward the town. I looked back toward Ridgway, just in time to see the streetlights flicker and die. Every few weeks, we were being spared, but now the rhythm was broken. The siren would never sound again, and whatever was beneath Ridgway was finally free. I ran. From the pit, from the tendrils, from the silence that had swallowed the world. Behind me, the siren's frame gave one final groan as the last of it was dragged into the sinkhole. Then it was gone, like it had never existed. Only the pulsing black roots remained, slithering outward beneath the sand, burrowing toward the heart of town. As I crested the ridge, I saw Ridgway laid out below, and I saw it reacting. Streetlights popped like overripe blisters. Power lines sagged and snapped. Dogs howled, then fell deathly silent. The air carried a scent of burning rubber, spoiled milk, and something older, like wet soil sealed inside a coffin for centuries. People were emerging from their homes, looking confused. Some stared up at the sky, murmuring. Others clutched their heads and dropped to their knees. The ground was humming, not loud, just enough to feel in your teeth. I sprinted past the diner, where Mrs. Kincaid stood outside, her apron soaked with blood. She was staring up at the sky, eyes rolled back, whispering the same phrase again and again. It remembers, it remembers, it remembers. I reached the sheriff's office. The windows were shattered. Inside, the walls were scorched with symbols, the same ones I'd seen on the walker and on the tendrils rising from the pit. Sheriff Harlan was there. He didn't blink, didn't move, just sat, muttering to himself, rocking in his chair with a shotgun across his lap. Told them not to shut it down. Told them, every 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks. His eyes met mine. It's coming, boy. A deep rumble cracked through the foundation. It was never just about the siren. the rumble grew into a tremor. Outside, Ridgway groaned like a wounded animal. Windows shattered. Alarms blared and died. The town's single-cell tower sparked, flickered, and collapsed in a rain of metal and smoke. Sheriff Harlan stood, slowly, the shotgun shaking in his hands. "You listening, boy?" he muttered. "They lied. Said it was a weather siren. Emergency warning. Said it was protocol." He gritted his teeth, lips pale. That sound. It wasn't for us. It wasn't a warning. It was a lullaby. For that. Another quake hit, stronger this time. I grabbed the edge of his desk to keep from falling. Harlan loaded 2 shells into the gun with shaking hands. The siren sang to it, kept it asleep. Now there's nothing to hold it back. From outside came a sound. Not a scream. Not an explosion. A voice. Deep, warbling, impossibly low. Like a cathedral full of bones whispering in unison. People began to walk. Men, women, even children, swaying as if hypnotized. Filing out of homes, crossing streets barefoot, eyes glazed and mouths moving in silent sync. They were going toward the sound, toward the pit. "They're answering," Harlan whispered, "just like last time." My blood ran cold. Last time, he looked at me, really looked. You ever wonder why Ridgway doesn't show up on most maps? Why no one ever moves here, but no one ever leaves? His jaw clenched. Because this town was never meant to grow. It was meant to contain. I turned toward the street, and that's when I saw it. The sky above the town, splitting, cracking like glass, something behind it watching. And beneath my feet, the heartbeat returned. Boom, boom, boom. But it wasn't the siren. It was the thing awake. The cracks in the sky widened, showing glimpses of something wrong on the other side, shapes moving in a color I couldn't name, like shadows burning in reverse. Each crack pulsed with the same rhythm I felt pounding through my veins. Sheriff Harlan gripped my arm. His skin was cold, almost waxy. This started long before us, boy. Long before Ridgway was even called Ridgway. The first settlers built this town on its back. They thought it was a mountain, a sleeping god. They were wrong. His eyes burned with something like fear and faith all at once. The siren wasn't a warning. It was a promise, a bargain. Every few weeks the sound kept it dreaming, kept it fed. The ground shook violently, rattling the windows. I stumbled against the wall as dust rained down from the ceiling. Fed with what? I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward the procession of people outside. The townsfolk were gathering in the street, standing perfectly still, their eyes blank and mouths slightly open. A hum built between them, like they were all breathing in perfect unison. Then I saw her. My mother. She stood among them, pale as ash, her hair clinging to her face like seaweed. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear. I took a step toward her, but Sheriff Harlan yanked me back. That's not her anymore. It's using her face, using all their faces. The cracks in the sky spread further, glowing now, as if the heavens were being pried open by something massive. And through those fractures, a single eye stared down at Ridgway. It wasn't human. It wasn't alive in any way I understood, but it saw me, and it knew my name. The eye filled the sky now, veined with lightning, swirling with impossible geometry. Just looking at it made my thoughts slip sideways, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. I stumbled to my knees, clutching my head as whispers slithered into my ears. They weren't speaking any language I knew, but I understood. Memories that weren't mine flashed behind my eyes. Fields of bone, towers made of screaming mouths, an ocean that breathed. Visions of before Ridgway, before humans, before time mattered. The townspeople moved in unison, raising their arms. The ground around the pit split like paper, revealing black stone etched with writhing symbols. The heartbeat beneath us grew faster, louder. Sheriff Harlan loaded the last shell into his shotgun. They called it the sleeper beneath. They thought if they sang to it, if they gave it enough, it would spare them. He looked at me. "You're not from here," You don't carry the blood. That might be the only thing that saves you. I shook my head. I'm not leaving them. Not my mom. Not the people still inside themselves. He gave a bitter smile. Then maybe you're the fool Ridgway needs. The town's siren sparked to life, but not on its own. I had jammed the button back in the police station, twisting wires until I got power. If it puts it to sleep, I said, then maybe we can put it down forever. The eye blinked, and the entire town shook like a dying animal. Do it, Harlan said, backing toward the door. But if it fails, run. Don't look back. I slammed the switch. The siren wailed, the people screamed, and from beneath the earth, it began to rise. The ground split wide as a wound and it rose, not with speed, but with certainty, like it had always known this moment would come. It wasn't a creature in the way you or I are. It had too many limbs, too many faces, some of them mine, some of them hers. The siren blared louder, but now it was distorted, breaking into static shrieks. The sound warped as if the thing was feeding on it, twisting it into something ancient and wrong. Sheriff Harlan fired into the void, but the bullets vanished before reaching it, consumed midair. He didn't fire a second time. Instead, he turned to the townspeople. Fight it. Please. Remember who you are. One of them twitched. A teenage girl. She blinked. Really blinked, and looked around, dazed. The siren cracked again, falling into silence. That silence was worse. Because that's when it spoke, not in words, but in memories. My mother's voice, her laughter in the kitchen, her scream when she saw the thing pretending to be her. If you know my name, I whispered, then you know what I'll do. I pulled the flare from my coat, not to signal for help, to ignite the tanks beneath the station, gasoline, diesel, enough to level half the block. I ran, lit it, and jumped. The blast tore through the town square. The creature screamed in 1,000 tongues as fire consumed it, part of it breaking, fracturing like obsidian under pressure. The sky sealed. The pit collapsed. And Ridgway was quiet. Now, weeks later, the town rebuilds. The people return to themselves. They don't remember everything, but the siren hasn't sounded since. Still, I don't sleep near windows anymore, because sometimes, when the wind's just right, I still hear it breathing.